Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the thing you hate talking about. Well, everyone, we've been through it. We did it. The 2020 election is completed. Well, not quite, but for the most part, it is over. So far, the winner is Joe Biden, and that's who is likely to stay. Who is likely to stay as the winner. To any Trump supporters out there, I am sorry, but it is looking like Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States. This video is going to be more of a kind of talking about things about the election a little bit and what the status what we can see American politics to look like for the next couple of years to come. So, currently Joe Biden is winning. He's projected to be the winner, and this will probably stay the outcome. There is not much Trump can do. I know he's filing legal challenges and stuff, but there is not much he can do to flip states in his favor. So this is, according to the Associated Press, the current standings. Wikipedia, however, has this as their current standings. Not every news network has called Arizona for Biden because, if we go back here, it's within, almost 10,000 or roughly 10,000 votes, maybe a little bit more than 10,000 votes. But it is very close in terms of who is declared the winner. The other state that's very close is Georgia. They are very, very close, but they are going to do a mandatory hand recount. So they will count every ballot by hand. A lot of the lawsuits that the Trump campaign is putting out there are being thrown out because there just isn't enough evidence. They're claiming all these things, and judges are going, there's nothing there. That's not happening. You're not providing evidence. Show me the evidence, and then I can make a judgment. But until then, you are not providing evidence. I have to throw it out, is basically what they're saying. One of the lawsuits that was thrown out was actually in Philadelphia, where the complaint was that the Trump campaign was not being allowed access to the room where votes were being counted. And the judge asked, well, is there anybody in there from the Trump campaign? And the Trump campaign went, well, there's a non-zero number in there. And the judge kind of went, okay, so does that mean there is somebody from the Trump campaign in there? And the Trump lawyers went, yes. And the judge went, so what's the issue? Kind of, there are things that aren't really sticking. They're kind of throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks. Now, I know there's a lot of claim of voter fraud. Voter fraud, as I discussed in my last video, is not very common here in the United States. It is certainly not enough to sway this election in any way. I mean, look at these total vote counts so far. That's a pretty hefty margin. Joe Biden has more votes or more in the popular vote than Hillary Clinton did against Donald Trump in 2016. So there just really is, it's very difficult to see what would happen or for Trump to come back from this. This would also not be a 2000 situation. 2000, the election between George W. Bush and Al Gore literally was down to Florida. And the only reason why George Bush won Florida was because the Supreme Court denied a recount in the state. And so George Bush won by a couple hundred votes and became the winner in the Electoral College. But if it wasn't for the Supreme Court stopping the recount in Florida, we probably would have had a Gore presidency. That's not based off of my opinion. That's based off of what has been found later on. Now here, for Trump to win, he would need to flip multiple states in his favor. And some of these margins are very, very large in states that he would need to flip in order for him to gain the electoral vote. Just to get the Electoral College to 270 for him, which is looking very, very unlikely. With all of that said, because our American system is oh so wonderful right now, there is one legal way that Trump could still technically become president. Basically what happens, and I'm going to run through the scenario, so please do not, I do not believe this would happen. If this did, I want to make this caveat that this country would erupt in a wave of protest and just unrest that we have not probably seen if this were to happen, just because of how divided everybody is right now. But what would happen is, as the Trump administration or the Trump campaign and other Republican higher ups continue to decry voter fraud, people start to believe that this might be the thing potentially. And Republican state legislatures would potentially send unaffiliated electors, delegations to the Electoral College. And when the College vote actually comes down, that will throw the whole thing in disarray, and then it would go to the House. So for those of you who don't understand how this Electoral College works, basically American voters vote for who they want their state to put their electors towards, right? So we are voting to tell people who actually decide who to vote for, is basically what we're doing as Americans. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that they have to do that. The electors could decide. Now, many states have penalties in place if they are what are known as faithless electors. But what states can do is send an unaffiliated elector group, the state legislatures can, that are for the other person. And then it throws everything in disarray, because now all of a sudden, well, who's doing what, who's doing where, who's voting for who, it doesn't make any sense. So when you get a contingent election, which is what it's called, when there's either a tie in the Electoral College or there's some butting heads back and forth in the Electoral College the election goes to the House. Now, instead of each individual member of the House, which would be 435 people, instead of those 435 people voting individually, each state votes as a delegation. And so there are 50 votes in that regard. And each delegation can decide how to vote. And since there are more states with red representatives or Republican representatives in the House, and there are less Democratic states or less states with Democratic representatives as a whole, Donald Trump could win through that vote. Now, is that very likely? I do not think so. But there is that small possibility. Really, what Donald Trump is potentially doing is either A, he cannot accept the fact that he lost, or B, he is trying to get money from his supporters to pay off campaign debts, to boost a potential political action committee that he has. I'm not quite sure if he's already created it or he's going to create one, or if he's just trying to keep his legacy there, or if he's building clout for himself. I don't know what the reasoning behind him not conceding is, but it is very, very unusual for an American presidential election like this, or to happen like this. Just it's very rare. Stuff like this very rarely happens, and even then, most of the time the loser still concedes. So I don't know what'll happen. I am fairly certain, though, that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States come 2021 in January. On Inauguration Day, President Trump will be president until then, still. But now, what does that mean for American politics? Well, what we are seeing in both the Democratic and Republican parties is a huge shift. There is a huge identity crisis in both parties. Now, I will admit the Republicans seem to have a little bit better understanding of what identity they're going towards, but still, nonetheless, I believe that both parties are going through an identity crisis. I'll start with the Republican Party. The Republican Party is you're going to have the more establishment types, kind of not the older guard, but like the people who were more well-known, or the people who ran the party before Trump came to office. Okay, before Trump politics happened. You're going to have people who want to return to that and potentially go about that because they realize how toxic the whole Trump style of politics can be and how detrimental this can be to the country. And then the other faction is going to be the Trumpian politics that have come about from Trump, and just the very polarized thing. So I think that's some of the biggest things that you're going to see amongst the Republican Party. And it'll be very interesting because there are, of course, those establishment Republicans who are in office, but then you're also going to have those who are more extreme. So currently there are a number of different representatives who have more extreme views are in the House now. And some establishment types have taking a more Trumpian tone. So it really just depends. It'll be really interesting to see how the Republican Party evolves after the loss of Donald Trump. Now, the Democratic Party has their own issues, and a lot of those issues are already coming to the forefront. For a long time, and especially here, they talk about Biden having to fight a huge primary against Bernie Sanders. And these two, Biden and Sanders, represent the identities upon which the Democratic Party can go. Biden representing the current centrist mode of the Democratic Party that's been around since Clinton, or you have Bernie Sanders, who is the more progressive type that wants to push the party in a more leftward direction. And really that comes down to, I mean, these both make sense. Why Trump is a big reason or big force in the Republican Party, and why Bernie Sanders is such a big force in the Democratic Party. And I think it really, and I can go over this in a different video, but it boils down to how we have handled things in the US for the past 40 to 50 years. But I think I'll save that for another video. Anyways, so there is that. I want everybody to know that, we still have some time yet. We still don't know who the Senate or who's going to run the Senate, because as of right now, if this would load, yeah, here we go. The Republicans are so close. There is 2 runoffs in Georgia that we are still waiting for. And so the Senate can be split 50-50, which would be really interesting to see. But because I know it says here, other parties have 2 seats, and that is from Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator Patrick Leahy, I believe, who are both independents. So, but they usually side with the Democrats. So it would be very interesting to see what happens in this runoff that happens in Georgia in January. So before Inauguration Day, there will be a runoff between David Perdue and Jon Ossoff, and I have to look here so I can pronounce the names right. Okay, where is it? Okay, and that's a special election. Raphael Warnock and Kelly Loeffler. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that. But anyways, well, because that's who it'll be. It's a special election there. Anyways, it'll be very, very interesting to see what happens. The House is going to remain in the hands of the Democrats, I believe. Let me just back it out here. 1 second. My internet is running slightly slow. Yes, the Democrats maintain control in the House, but it will be slightly a slim majority. There are some districts that haven't been called yet, but they're, for the most part, it'll be a very slim majority in the House. So yeah, we will have to wait and see what happens. So anyways, I hope everyone is staying safe and is doing well, and that with this election over, we can continue to push for what we believe in. And so with that, solidarity, everyone.